This evening for the purpose of the Common Council Ad Hoc Committee meeting for the Long Ridge Road change of ordinance, here being held on Thursday, August 16th, beginning at 6:30 p.m. in the caucus room here on the third floor. Present are myself, Jack Knapp, Chairman, Councilman Jack Knapp, Chairman, Councilman Shay Negerseth, and Councilman Fred Visconti, also serving on this committee. We have present Corporation Counsel Les Pinter, and we have Planning Director Dennis Elbert. We also have with us the petitioners and councilmen, Dwayne Perkins and Paul Rotello, as well as Fred Visconti, one of the petitioners, and several members of the public. Again, the purpose of this is for the Long Ridge Road change of ordinance. I'll read into record the letter that was submitted on June 25th, 2009, honorable members of the Common Council. Dear council members, recent events have shown that the city ordinance needs to be reviewed. Additional areas of Long Ridge Road may need to be covered under the framework of the existing ordinance. I request an ad hoc committee consisting of Planning and Zoning Department and Corporation Council to review the current ordinance and to examine solutions to this problem. Thank you for your attention to this important matter. Sincerely, and again, Dwayne Perkins, Fred Visconti, and Paul Rotello. So that's where we stand, and here we are. I'm going to call upon council now just to give us a brief overview as to what our legal ramifications are as moving forward in this, if you would. Mr.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, the scenic road ordinance is established and was established by the council about 15 years ago in section 17 of the Code of Ordinances, and it establishes, simply put, procedures whereby after a petition by abutting property owners on a particular scenic road, the council, after a series of steps, including receipt of a statement of request from the petitioners, would hold a public hearing and get reports from different departments, and then at the end, if the scenic road was going to be made scenic, would adopt an ordinance which would be incorporated into the existing ordinance, specifying the portion of the road. As the committee knows, there's a portion of Long Ridge Road that presently has been declared scenic. It's the only one in Danbury at this time. So if an additional piece of that road or another road wants to be, or people seek to have it designated as a scenic road, it would come through the same process as this earlier one did. And you would adopt an ordinance to designate it as a scenic road, and then it would fall within all of the protections. And by the way, the ordinance is established in accordance with a statute that permits the council to adopt an ordinance in this regard. So anyway, short story is that if the council and this committee wants to recommend to the council the addition of another piece of this road, you'd have to get the petitioners on the road. A majority of the frontage of all the petitioners would have to petition, and you'd need that, and then the council would proceed to take the steps to adopt the amended ordinance. That's the short story.
Okay. And that would, of course, go to a public hearing, and then
public hearing, there'd be certified mail notice to the abutters, obviously an opportunity for them to come in. The council would get some reports and then make its decision.
Okay. All right, and then Dennis, to you, Planning Director. Only a portion of this road is currently scenic. Were you part of the decision-making process when it was?
Not at all.
Do you understand why they only did a portion of it?
No, well, because I was not part of the of the discussion, so one can only surmise that they thought that that was the most crucial part that needed to be declared scenic.
And it's my understanding that the only portion that is not is the southerly-most portion of that?
Yeah, you know, that as you go south on Long Ridge, there's a dog leg, and it's that further south to Reading.
Okay. And then to the petitioners, I would assume that's the area that we're looking to move forward on. So, okay. At this point, I'll call on any one of the petitioners if they'd like to lend their...
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Alpern. Tell me again, which portion of that road is not covered?
Well,
Is it
it's not the best map, but
the portion
North.
that was near the proposed tank?
no, that's not part. There's a dog leg here on, as you go south, I'd say it's about, excuse me, down here.
Heading toward West Reading Road?
Yeah. It goes down to the border.
That's not what we're talking about.
That's the part that's in now. The other part is not. The northern part. Certainly the part around where the water tank, for example, was proposed is not included.
So that area that the water tank was proposed is not under the existing scenic road?
No.
Okay. Nor is further down by West Reading?
Quite a ways, yeah, until you get to that dog leg and then that portion. And, you know, there's a number of rather stately homes down there, and that area is.
Okay.
If I may, the northernmost portion is not. And the northernmost portion is
Correct.
where Eureka is. And I don't know about the southernmost portion to Eureka, but I do know that after the dog leg and down some is covered by the ordinance. I just
Yes.
don't know how far.
All the way to the border.
It does go all the way to Reading.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about the northernmost portion.
Well, there's an intersection.
Right.
That's a stone's throw.
I mean, for the purpose of this letter, we're really talking about the area that abuts the Eureka property, which is north of the discussion right now, closer to Brushy Hill.
And those were the lots that are included in the original request.
And I assume are you going all the way up to Reservoir?
Well, I mean, the idea would be to go as far as we could with realizing the practical purpose. We've got to get signatures from the people along that property. So I think at some point we're going to need to go out there and figure out what's actually doable. And that might have been the reason initially that, you know, it just takes forever to get signatures. And there might have been at some point rumors of a particular project that got people interested enough to do this. So that may be why they only did one section.
So if I could, so you're asking for the council to approve you to...
Well, I think,
You know,
yeah,
If
I
you want
mean...
to go get signatures to make it happen, go get signatures to make it happen.
Right, exactly.
The council needs to
Right.
approve that.
Right. No, the council doesn't need to approve that. I think that we need to have a discussion with the neighbors, but we need to get a feeling from the committee as to whether they think that this is the right way to go. I mean, I'll leave that up to the committee. I think it is. I think it's important, and I think that we've seen in the last couple of months that it's maybe even more important than we even thought. And I think it's pretty important. Long Ridge Road is a unique road in Danbury, and you know, there's really no downside to protecting the actual visible portion that you travel. It's a gateway road from other communities, and as they're driving into Danbury, when you take people into Danbury on that road, very often you can say, we're in Danbury now. They go, wow, I had no idea. It's beautiful. Not that Danbury's ugly, but there's some entrances that are
He was
less
quick to add.
aesthetic than others, and this is one of the most aesthetic, so I think we should protect it. But when it comes to regulations, sometimes people have, you know, different ideas, so. If I may, the idea, for me, I don't want to speak for Dwayne here, or for Fred, but for me, would be just to see if the committee was leaning in favor of something like this or not. If they were leaning in favor, we could then go farther and put some effort into this, and then come back to the committee and present it to the council. If they thought this was a boneheaded idea, then, you know, we'd have to come up with something else.
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the other committee members, but who would not want to take a piece of property and make it into a scenic road?
Well,
You know, as long as everybody who lives on that road is in
Right.
agreement that that's what they want to do. And this is
Or-
a scenic area, this is not a historical area, so there is a major difference there.
There is an elephant, you know, in the attic, and that's a property owner who doesn't live on Long Ridge, but owns a good portion of it, so, you know, there is that issue. That's all I'll say about that.
Through the chair to Attorney Pinter, just to clarify, the proposed water tower, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the reasons that brought this forward
Right.
is that project, right? Would an ordinance like this necessarily protect that from becoming, from that project to go through?
Probably not, even if you had the portion of that road covered in the ordinance at that time. The ordinance limits the protection of the scenic road to the road and right-of-way only. There really isn't any view protection, if it will. It came up and we considered that, whether a view could be incorporated into it. It would really be a kind of like Star Trek. You go into areas yet undiscovered. I don't think the law would support, it'd be difficult for the law to support a scenic view or a vista protection where you would prohibit a developer from, and developer could be a residential developer, from building a house. Let's soften it up a little bit. It'd be very difficult to prevent a person from building something on a piece of property 100, 200 feet out because the scenic road was protected. That would be a pretty slippery slope to go down. So to answer your question, it probably would not protect that. What it would protect is that it would prevent old trees from being cut down. It would prevent other development of property along that pathway, meaning the road and the right-of-way, which would detract from the scenic character of it. But it really wouldn't, and the ordinance states that specifically, that people who own property are not prohibited from developing it appropriately, so long as it doesn't negatively impact the scenic road designation. And again, that's the road and the right-of-way. Once you're off the right-of-way, the scenic road ordinance has very limited impact. I hope that answers the question.
Just a quick statement. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would really like to see the entire strip of that road fall under this ordinance, and also I'd like to commend the Planning Commission for their diligence and exercising the rights that they had within them to reject that proposed tower.
I should, if I may, before we go further on the water tank, we're under appeal, as you know, to the DPUC. So I would have to be cautious on comments at this point regarding that specific
Understood.
proposal.
Yeah, and if I can just say, this is not specifically about a particular project that's proposed or, you know, in front of the city, either now or in the future. It's about Long Ridge, and it's about things that attach to Long Ridge. Attorney Pinter mentioned that it would not have stopped the water tank, and I think that's true. And if we could do this today, and they came in front of us tomorrow, this would really have no impact on that. So this is not in response to Bethel. It just is one of those things that makes you think that we've got an asset here that needs to be protected. And if I could just amplify Attorney Pinter's comments, while it wouldn't specifically prevent a structure being built, whether it's a water tank or a McMansion or something like that, it would certainly have an effect on curb cuts, attachments to the road, cuts through the road, pipes that have to be laid, any stone walls that have to be moved, utilities that have to be put under Long Ridge, and very often those things have to happen for projects to proceed. And it also lends moral authority to a person or group that is advocating in favor of preservation. Look, we've got this ordinance. Yes, it's true that this particular project is not necessarily affected by it, but the intent of the people of Danbury is to preserve the natural state of this corridor. And if this particular project falls slightly outside of that, but at the same time has a big impact, I think you can make a case. And I'm not making that case, but I think a case can be made, or at least it can be helped by having this ordinance. This is not going to affect private property owners at all, unless they are going to affect Long Ridge. So Bethel shouldn't be nervous about this, and somebody who has plans on 25 acres, some back portion of Long Ridge to build a house, was not going to be affected on this. Unless they want to move a stone wall or do something like that, then they would be affected.
I should add, in the water tank case, the water tank was back about 80 feet from the right-of-way. So if you wanted a view shed, let's say, you'd have to go back pretty far. And that adds some significant power. I don't even know if you can do that legally under state law, but let's say for the argument that you could. You say, well, you can't cut down any trees 100 feet back from the road, move any stone walls, that kind of thing. Well, that's a pretty harsh set of restrictions on private property. In the case of the water tank, they already have a driveway, so it wasn't even a matter of, which they were going to use, so it wasn't even a matter of preventing them from cutting through, let's say, an existing stone wall, or cutting down trees for that purpose. So, I take your point. I understand the issue that you're raising about designating this road as something special, but we shouldn't go into that thinking that it's going to give us extra power, say, to prevent stuff we don't like. And I also suspect that if you wanted to add more stuff, and again, I'll defer to Les as to whether or not you could, going back, it would probably apply to the entire all scenic roads. So then you're biting off even more than you thought you were initially. So, you have to understand that it's limited in what it can do. And I do remember at one of the hearings, I wasn't part of the initial one, but there were those who felt that it was going to deny people property rights, and that created some controversy until it was explained that no, it just pertains to the right-of-way.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have had a couple pieces of property that wanted to do driveways, which I believe were in the scenic road area, one being the Weedle property. I can't think of the other ones a couple years ago that we were involved in. By designating, I would think it'd be the rest of the road, wherever, maybe north or south or east or west, as a scenic road area, it does give us some sort of leeway to deal with people that want to put in a driveway or build a house up to a certain point. Am I right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Obviously, the other situation is something else. So I think that's basically what we're looking to do with this whole road, is to designate the rest of the road as a scenic road area, and at least have the leeway of having them, the contractor or whoever it may be, have to come to the city and say, well, this is what we want to do. We now have the right to say, well, this is what you should do, is what we've done in the past.
Just to put this into a little context, this is unusual. This process is unusual because it's really a self-limiting ordinance. What happens is the people who live on the road, the majority of the frontage, has to agree and has to ask you to adopt this ordinance. Okay, so they're actually asking for themselves to be limited in what they can do. It's interesting. Now, second step is that after they ask you for that, you can agree to it or not. You don't have to do it. But if you agree to do that, then what happens is that you then have the power, the city then has the power, as you said, Fred, to review and restrict alterations in accordance with the ordinance. So it's kind of a, you become partners with the folks. Folks say, we by majority want to limit ourselves, and city, when you adopt this ordinance, please help us limit ourselves. It's kind of funny. So what happens is the minority is the only one who's affected negatively. The people who didn't vote for it, they have to also be restricted the same way. But I just wanted to mention that because it's an unusual ordinance in that way, is that the people ask for themselves to be limited in what they can do with their own property on that on that road.
Follow up?
Yeah, go ahead.
So then the next step then would be, now is it up to the committee or to the people who live there to get this petition going, or, and then have a neighborhood meeting or whatever?
Well, as we're talking here, this committee is more or less, if you excuse the term during election year, an exploratory committee, where you receive the petition, sorry, but you take a look at the ordinance, what you're going to do with it, and the next step would be, if you want to do something, then you would ask whoever, I don't know, department it would be, for letters from the people, from the abutters, and they have to file what's called, I think it's a statement of interest or expression of interest or something. They file that, it goes through steps, goes to the assessor determines the lots, and then it's forwarded to the town clerk and then to the council. So it goes through some steps, but that's what you would be doing, is recommending that that procedure commence.
So then, for the purpose of tonight's group, we could make a motion for the council to request from the neighbors or from the landowners.
Similar to an assessment project, you'd be asking, in that case, you ask the engineering department to send out letters asking if people are interested in hooking up to sewer. Here,
Right.
you'd be asking letters to be sent for people on that road that you set out. Are you interested in, going with this?
And these letters would have to come from a department within City Hall, or?
Right, I'm not sure, it's not really clear who it would be from, but somebody, maybe the mayor's office initiates letters and directs some department to send those out. And then that would come back to the council. It'll come through the assessor, to the town clerk, I think the town clerk, then the assessor, and then over to you. There's 2 or 3 people in between. And then it would get to the council, and then that council would receive that information and either send it back to this committee or to another committee for review. And then you have the public hearing and go through all that.
And that, if I may, and that requires that the section you're interested in is clearly delimited. Okay, so we know precisely what area you're
Right.
talking about. If I may follow up, I view this from maybe a different slant. If I were a property owner along Long Ridge Road, and I liked the way it looked, and I didn't want to see it changed, I might be interested in this kind of an ordinance. Why? Because I want to restrict what city government can do. That city government can't widen the road significantly. City government can't come in and just willy-nilly start cutting down large and mature trees or tear down stone walls. That's how I view it. I don't view it as an ordinance that restricts property owners, but as an ordinance that empowers property owners to restrict what government can do.
Here we
Through the
go.
chair, it's funny that you said that, because I actually had some calls from not unit owners, but property owners saying they actually wanted portions of the road widened because of, narrow roadways for buses and things like that. So it's funny you mentioned that.
That would
I'm
go
not
to-
sure whether there's provision in there that allows that kind of thing for safety or to, I'm just not sure about.
It'd probably fall within the alteration portion, which
But
would
it's
require.
certainly
And you,
limited, it's not wholesale, we're gonna make a 2-lane road, 4-lane.
if I may, you can remove half-mile chunks after you've done this, and then if you want, you can widen them and then put them back, re-scenicize them if you want. It's right in.
Scenic guys. Oh, that's good.
Gonna have to Google that word.
Make the words up and stuff.
Why not? Somebody made them up to begin with.
How'd you spell that?
Okay,
Is that scenicization, is that?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the state statute lays it out without great detail, but the basic process is the name of the road and where you want to do this, a description of it, signatures of the owners of a majority. It doesn't say a supermajority. I guess it would just be 51%. Names and addresses of owners who do not want it to be designated thusly, and then that has to go to the Common Council, and the tax assessor has to verify that the ownership and total lot frontages of those signing the statement of approval actually own that portion of the road. Then there's a hearing, and then a decision. So it looks as if Director Alpern's probably going to have a hand in this, as well as the tax center, if not Corporation
I didn't see
Corporation
that.
Council.
Just another job for you.
I didn't understand that. I didn't read that at all.
We'll make that clear for you.
Yeah, wait.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to. We'll give it to Joanne.
Yes, she's got nothing else.
All right, if I could, is there any other discussion amongst the petitioner or council or planning? If not,
Just that I think, any kind of success on this, it's got to be very clear as to what it does and what it doesn't do. The rumor mills can get started very quickly, as I think they did the last time. I do remember one fellow I won't identify him, but he was out there screaming. It was like the healthcare things. He was really quite upset, but he had a misconception. And again, I think it's got to be understood that this is basically a restriction as to what government can do, what city government can do on a city road. And not that it is a restriction of what people can do on their own private property.
I just have one final comment, if I may, through the chair. Within the last 6 months, we actually had a petition from a landowner who has property abutting the scenic roadway, and by unanimous decision, we allowed her to put a driveway in.
right?
So it wasn't even an issue. She just came before us and said, look, we really need to do this to have access to a house. We said, fine. It wasn't, we didn't tie her up for 3 years and cost her $1 million. She wanted to do it, we said, okay. So there's a perfect example of someone who's affected by this ordinance who was able to put in a reasonable structure on their property. It wasn't an issue.
Yeah, those are hard cases, and I think certainly if you have a piece of property and that's the only access, then you certainly have a certain amount of say into where the driveway goes. But to say that to absolutely prevent access to a person's private property brings in a whole host of legal issues that you probably want to avoid. But I think in that case, in the Waddell case, there was not a stone wall that was involved, and
Pretty good grade, though. There was that issue.
There was a tree
12%.
involved.
Right,
there was a tree, one tree.
Right.
One
You know,
tree.
one tree.
There was a grading problem, but that was the nature of the topography. And that's why it allows some flexibility in administration because of those very design considerations.
Okay. At this point in time, I'll entertain a motion on this.
Sure. Well, at this point, I guess we would, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Pinter, as far as wording is concerned, but recommend to start the petition process, or
Recommend to the council
recommend to the,
that
right, that we start the petition process
in accordance with the ordinance.
in
Sure.
accordance with the
Yes,
ordinance.
which includes contacting those affected property owners as identified. Now, we have to
Somebody's gonna-
identify,
Somebody's going to
right?
have,
Right.
well, somebody's going to have to identify what stretch you're talking
yeah,
about.
now,
I think the stretch we're talking about is Long Ridge Road,
The whole road?
the whole road.
so taking whatever's not covered now.
Right,
Wherever's
exactly.
not covered now.
Covered. Well, I think that's what I heard.
Okay.
That's what the petitioner was looking for, so take the entire road of Long Ridge Road and,
Subtract the part that's already covered.
Right.
And the petition would be, the letters would go out to those people on those portions.
Correct.
Okay.
And that would be the first step, and then we'd go.
Yes.
Right.
Once the council approves your report, then somebody, I don't know who it'll be, we'll have to figure out who will send out those letters. So that would be the motion.
Okay, and then-
Dennis knows how to type.
I think corporation counts.
No, the chairman said Dennis. The chairman just said Dennis.
No, it's not my job description.
And then, a quick question, so then this would be continued? This committee, or?
No,
We wouldn't have
no,
to
no.
commit?
This is a recommendation we're going to put before the council at the next meeting.
Right. The mayor could reappoint the same committee or another one once the information came in.
Okay. Good.
And second motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.